Welcome, everybody, and thank you for coming and taking a bit of your Friday afternoon to come and join us to hear part 4 of my stories from the Faculty Development Leave. Today, I have a special co-presenter. I'm Dr. Craig Burnside.
I'm Shelby Rivenson, his favorite daughter.
And today, we're going to tell you about what we learned when we traveled through Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic about the Holocaust. So today's title is the Holocaust Site Travels. What we learned, what we saw, what we learned, and what we felt. And this the thing that we really want to communicate the most is the feelings that where we went and what we saw evoked in us. And you'll see these words in several different places, and they are
Arbeit macht frei, which translation means work sets you free. Freedom in this case was always death. And it's at every single concentration camp that you will go to.
So as I said, this is chapter 4. I'm being a biologist. My focus was on studying some of the pioneers in the biological sciences, Charles Darwin, Gregor Mendel, Andreas Vesalius. Those are on my YouTube channel if you'd like to go check out that original content. And what an FDL is, it's in a lot of places they call it a sabbatical. And it's where a faculty member can conjure up some idea and make a proposal, have it go through a pretty rigorous evaluation process, and if approved, take a semester to go and explore your idea, all the while getting full pay and benefits. So it's a really pretty good deal. And somebody once described it to me as a once-in-a-lifetime deal, and it's actually more than once in a life, less frequent than once in a lifetime, because most people in the real world have never even heard of that kind of thing. And so to be able to go off and do this was a very, very big privilege. So my studies took me to England for Charles Darwin, northern Italy for Andreas Vesalius, and the southern Czech Republic and northern Austria, Vienna, for Gregor Mendel. As soon as I got approved, I got really excited. And I booked some plane tickets. I found a really cheap fare. It was like $600 round trip to London Heathrow. I booked it 2 months apart from that I was going to be there for 2 months. And it's one of those airfares where you couldn't change anything. And as I started doing my planning, I realized that even doing an extensive dive into my 3 scientists, it wasn't going to take me 2 whole months. I was going to have maybe 2 weeks or 10 days to myself. And so I told my dear sweet wife, Penny, this is us at the Vatican in front of a Leonardo. I said, hey, look at that map, pick a place, meet me over there, and we'll hang out for 10 days or so. Meanwhile, around the same time in November of 23, this one here, who's working on a master's degree in Holocaust history, gave me the look that only a daughter daddy recognizes and says, you know, I'm studying the Holocaust and you're going to be over there. And at the time, I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. And, but we talked about it for a couple of months. And then finally, when I got approved and I asked Penny, where do you want to go? Where do you want to meet me? Penny said, take your daughter. And that's Penny and I at Trevi Fountain in Rome. And so I didn't want to just take her over there. We weren't going on vacation. I wasn't on vacation. She wasn't going to go over there on vacation. What I did was I gave her a copy of my proposal and the rubric that the committee used to score it. And I told her, score my proposal, get her to look at it critically. And I said, don't give me 100 because I know I couldn't hit every topic. And she came back and gave me an 85.
I did it twice. The first time I gave him a pretty high score. And then I was like, I should grade him a little bit harder.
Just for the record, the committee gave me a 92. And so then her next assignment was to write her own proposal. I told her, follow the pattern in what you read my proposal. Tell me where you want to go, why you want to go there, what you hope to accomplish. And this is a grant request. Literally, it's a grant request. And there's the granting authority right there, me and Penny. And we went back and forth. I helped her write it as if I was her graduate advisor. And we spent a month or so going over it. And she did a really, really good job. And I called her up and I told her, I'll meet you in Paris. And there we were. That's the Paris, the Arc de Triomphe at the Champs-Élysées. Now, we really should have started further east, maybe like Frankfurt. But at the time, we were thinking about going to Normandy. And then as we looked at the timing and travel, we decided, no, Normandy is not what we're going to go to. So we got on, we left Paris, went on a train, got to Munich. But then there's this guy. A few of you might recognize him. This guy's name is Jerome Amend, and he was the A&P biology instructor at Sparta High School, where me and both of my sisters went to high school. He was also an adjunct professor at the local community college, and we called him Prof. A. And I can thank him, really, for pretty much becoming a biologist. I've kind of become him. And the prof was already taken. So I have my students call me Dr. B for two reasons. One, prof seems a little bit like steel and valor. And also, there was a long period of time between when I became Dr. Burnside and became a full professor. Well, he used to tell us, he had a saying, that history is littered with stories of man's inhumanity toward man. And if you think about it, that's rings very true. We're going to tell you some stories from places that we went and things that we saw. And this is just one story of man's inhumanity to man. There are countless others. So Shelby's focus is on environmental history. So I'll let her tell you what that is.
So it's not quite as environmental as it sounds. It's less science and more history. It's a method of looking at history in a new way. So it's studying the past that focuses on the relationship between the humans and the natural world around them, and how that natural world shapes the culture and the historical events in each place. So some of the questions that I ask myself on this trip are, how did the land, climate, water, and resources influence what happened in that area? How did the humans use, change, or damage the environment that we're looking at? And how did those interactions shape the culture, economy, and the daily life of the people that lived there?
And so we got on a train in Paris, and we went through Strasbourg, down this way. First stop is in Munich. Just outside of Munich is the first concentration camp that we visited, the Dachau concentration camp. From there, we went up to Nuremberg, then over to Prague, where we went to another camp and a museum and some other places we're going to tell you about. Then another long train ride up here to Warsaw, a quick trip down here to Lublin, then to Krakow, and that's where we went. So we spent a lot of time on trains. We got to see a pretty good amount of the European countryside.
And train stations have really great food, just so you know.
The train stations in Germany have really great food. So this is the entrance to the Dachau concentration camp.
It was built in 1933 as a prototype, basically, for the rest of the entire concentration camp system. This was originally made for prisoners of, like government opposers, basically. Anyone who could be classified as that. So if you oppose the government in any way, shape, or form, if you don't fit into the box that they have created, this is the place that you end up.
Gypsies,
yeah, gypsies, Jews, everyone pretty much. Any artists, professors, anyone who could speak out against what was going on was imprisoned at Dachau.
And it was opened when?
1933.
1933. So when people think about the Holocaust, generally we think about 1939 when Poland invaded, Germany invaded Poland, but they were well on their way to dealing with people harshly. And Dachau set the model for the industrials type of death camps later. This plaque is right on the inside as you go in honor of the 42nd Rainbow Division and other U.S. 7th Army liberators of Dachau concentration camp, April 29th, 1945. Now, as a Nazi regime was collapsing, these different camps got liberated all at about the same time. This is in everlasting memory of the victims of Nazi barbarism. This tablet is dedicated May 3, 1992. This was the first time that the Allies, the American troops, witnessed the horrors that were to come and left them scarred. This is a monument which is made of emaciated, a replication of emaciated prisoners made to resemble a barbed wire fence. Now, one of the things about the German people is that they don't try to hide this history. They don't like this history. They hate it. They're angry still at this day, and so, but they own up to it. So much so that that symbol is on the city buses at Dachau. So they don't run. They don't hide. They educate the idea that it'll never happen again. This is an aerial view of part of the camp. So you can see there's lots of barracks. Way too many people were jammed in there. This next picture is taken from right about here in that main way. So the barracks are mostly gone now, but you can see where their foundations were. I might add, this is the nicest weather we had at any of the places we actually visited. The real evil took place to the left of this picture. But that's what a typical barrack would look like. And this is reconstruction. It's obviously pretty new. We've all seen pictures like this. It was a whole nother story standing there looking at it and thinking about the number of people that were piled into these places and just the unsanitary conditions, the parasites that were being passed and diseases back and forth. Sometimes I might have to take a second because it's pretty emotional. This was
my first emotional moment as well. I've studied the Holocaust for a very long time. I've read lots of memoirs, and just turning the corner and seeing the chimney it's hard to describe the emotions, but it was an overwhelming sense that I just needed to cry. I didn't know where it came from. Tears just kind of fell. It wasn't like a hysterical moment, but I could feel the heaviness of the souls that had never left that area. And it was an intense feeling, especially having gone through the memorial from start to this is the end. So we would have, seen all of the pictures of the victims right before we walked up to this building and saw what was inside.
Yeah, you come around the corner and there's the crematorium right there. In particular, take a look at the shape of this door and these two windows. We'll be able to see this in another picture. But this is, like she said, it's the first time you come around the corner and you're confronted with this. I have a friend of mine who had visited this place, and before I went there, I asked him what it was like, and his face went blank, and he said, it's evil. He said, you could feel the evil, you could feel the death thick still in the air. And he was absolutely right. So first you get gassed. This is the little areas where they would put the gas, Xylocon B gas canisters into the room. And then there's that right here. Earlier in the tour, we saw this picture. Notice that's the same door and those same two windows. And we have just people thrown off to the side, just as if they were trash, waiting to be cremated. So this is our second day. Right? We spent the first day in Paris, and this is our second day. And then we saw the ovens. Now, the Nazis destroyed Dachau, and these ovens are recreations. And they are in the same exact place where the cremations took place. although they didn't take place in these particular things because they were, like I said, recreated. And that makes a difference. Nobody got cremated in these things. We were still, it was like looking at a museum piece or a replica of something. It was profound. It was moving. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. We had a tour guide, an excellent tour guide named Adam. You want me to tell it?
Yeah, you go for it.
So Adam had a friend who had passed away recently who was a survivor of Auschwitz. Now, this is Auschwitz. It's not Dachau. We see the iconic building that serves as its entrance. And what would happen is the trains with the prisoners would come in. They would offload on the dock. The SS guards and doctors would separate them. People who could work on that side. On this side, women, children, anybody who couldn't work, old men, children, boys under 15 would be sent to that side. The people on the left side would be marched right afterwards to the chambers and killed that day.
Within about an hour of their arrival.
The guy Adam told the story that this guy was a kid at the time. He was 12 years old, and his dad was on the side with the working people. And his dad was telling the SS guard, "That's my son. He's trained as a locksmith. He can work. He knows how to work machines. He's 15." He wouldn't. "He's 15. Come on." And the guy kept begging the guard. And finally, the guard just kind of went and let the kid come over. His mother and sister were gassed that day. His father died at the camp, and he was the only survivor. And looking at this picture and hearing Adam tell that story was just another profound experience that there's just not words. People ask me, "What was it like?" And I say, I don't have any words to describe it. And I don't know if I really want those kind of words. But what we did is we went and we stared evil in the face. And it just stared blankly back at us. And this was one of the most first profound experience. Now you can imagine that was pretty depressing. It was. We're not happy. It's not like on rah-rah. Also, what happened to be going on while we were in Munich was Oktoberfest. Not exactly a coincidence. And so we took the train back into Munich and we went to Oktoberfest. And without spending too much time on Oktoberfest, I can tell you, you should probably visit that someday. Imagine
Six Flags and the Texas State Fair put together with the best food you've ever had.
Yeah, Texas and the State Fair and Six Flags put together to celebrate beer first and food second. Imagine a room the size of an auditorium filled with people standing on tables, singing and bashing beer flying all over the place, and there was at least a dozen of them. And I said, "We got to go. We got an 8 o'clock train in the morning. We can't stay here." We had 2 beers each and some sausage, and we walked out of there. And I knew the apple had not fallen far from the tree when she said, "But these are my people." And the funniest thing we saw, there was one guy, he had 2 friends, and this guy was passed out drunk. And his friends were carrying him. Literally, his toes were dragging on the pavement. There was puke in the train station. It was just unbelievable. So we needed a little bit of levity after that first day. And so what we're going to do here is, as we transition from one place to another, we've got a couple of funny stories to tell you. So we got on the train and we went to the next town, which is, we mostly call it Nuremberg, but it's pronounced
Nuremberg?
Nuremberg. It's not Nurem.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a nice cathedral there. We wanted to go to the museum where the trials were held, but it was closed on Tuesdays, and we could only adjust so many things to get to so many places. We were really busy. We never spent much time in any one place. It was hit, get on a train, get on a bus, next place. So we spent the afternoon, though, in Nuremberg, and Nuremberg is worth going there just for this, and I'm not even lying. So she's telling me about, she has a work friend who tells her about, what do you call that?
A Nuremberger.
A Nuremberger. Think about it.
German version of a burger.
Hamburg is in hamburger, Frankenfurter from Frankfurt, and we're in Nuremberg, and now we're having a Nuremberg. So I'm telling her, okay, that's great. We got one of these things. They have two little special sausages in there. We got some sauerkraut. It's great with the mustard on it. I took a bite of that, and it was worth going there for. It really was. This we got in a train station. You can see we got the tray table there. And so we wandered around. We went to this castle, and we climbed up there and got a good view of the town. That was fun. And
we had 5 hours to do everything this day. We dropped our stuff off at the train station and went for a little bit of a wander before we rode. I think it was 9 hours to Prague from there.
Something like that.
It was a long train ride, so we wanted to get a little bit of movement in.
We certainly wanted to eat, and so we ordered some more food from this stand here, and I'm over here eating it, and there's this guy.
Living my mustard dreams.
Look how focused he is. There's a squirty thing of mustard over here, and he walked over there and took his sandwich and put a thing of mustard on it. He took a bite, and his eyes rolled back into his head with pleasure, and he did that for 5 minutes.
Until it was gone, yeah. Literally every bite. I didn't do that because I didn't want to be like the gross American tourist, but if I could have, I would have.
But take a look on that guy's face. He's determined to get that mustard. So Nuremberg, how we get on a train, next destination, Prague. Here's the border between Germany and the Czech Republic. So we get on this train, and it's a crowded train, it's a slow train, it's hot. We had to sit in separate places, and she was behind me and a couple of rows back, and I sat down next to this guy who was dirty, dusty, stinky, and I got all judgmental in my mind. And one of the things I had been training Shelby on travel is that when you get on a train or a bus or a tram, if you're wondering if you're headed in the right direction, figure out if I'm headed in the right direction, what's the next stop? And if the next stop is not the right one, get off. And if you're on a train, just go the other direction. And I'm looking at this schedule, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, what the heck? We're having to go to Schwandorf and change trains. But the train looks like it's going both to Pilsen and someplace down here. And I was like, we're over here on the train, right about here. And I was like, this makes no sense. And it's all in German, of course, which makes even less sense to me. And in proof that not all heroes wear capes, shout out to Brandon, Wade, and Danny, by the way. This man that's sitting next to me, he says, where are you trying to go? I said, well, we're trying to go to Schwandorf to change the train to Prague. He said, you're on the wrong part of the train. The wrong part of the train. I said, what? He said, yeah, at the next stop, this train splits in half. And the front half goes one way, and the back half goes the way you're trying to go to. So I was like, I'd never heard of that. What? So I come back, I go, Shelby.
Mind you, it was the next stop.
Yeah, like 30 seconds away. so yes, the good Lord sent that man to sit next to me. And I said, went up to Shelby, I said, hey, grab your stuff, follow me, I'll explain later. So I got to tell you, she did great. She hasn't always listened to me her whole entire life. But we did our travel with military precision, and she was a great travel partner. She did exactly what needed to be done every time. She said, okay, she got her stuff. Now, we both have the regular school size like day pack that you see school kids run around with, and backpack suitcases. So we're not having to drag anything across cobblestones. This is like, put that on, let's go. We got off out of the train. We ran back a couple cars. There was a conductor there. I said, Praha? That's what they call Prague. And he said, Da. And I said, oh. We got on. As soon as we got on, that train left, and then we were right in the front of it. We could see the one we had been on went in a different direction. That is just the weirdest thing. And also, the German trains have a reputation of being on time. Like, that was not our experience. And our train was running about 15 minutes late. And sometimes the connections are really tight. And I'm like, we're going to get to Schwandorf. We're not going to get there on time to make our train. So we get off, and we figure our train had already left. And here we are in the middle of nowhere. It's like, okay, well, one of the things that when you're traveling, you can solve any problem if you throw enough money at it. And that's not my first choice. And so we're trying to figure out, well, what the heck? Is there a place to stay? It's a little tiny nowhere town. And I look out of the corner of my eye, I see a train that says Praha. It was late too. So I said, once again, Shelby's sitting there relaxing in the train station. I said, come on, let's go. And we ran over there, and there was a female lady conductor there. And I said, Praha? And she said, da. And we got on, the train left. So off we go to Prague. The city of Prague is dominated by the Prague Castle, very famous view. Really pretty. That's in the daytime. We didn't get there until a little after 9 o'clock at night. And it was illuminated. It looked really pretty. She was asleep. We wore her out.
When we got there.
We go. Time to tell you about these two characters. So this first one on the left is Heinrich Himmler, who was hired by
Adolf Eichmann.
Eichmann, he's the right-hand man, right?
Yeah.
Himmler's job was to exterminate the Jews. And he hired as his assistant the butcher of Prague, Reinhard Heydrich. He was the one who came up with the final solution. And he was assassinated by some Czech expatriates who had escaped and were in England, were trained and parachuted into Prague. They assassinated him. It's a longer story than that, but there's a monument right there where it happened. People of Prague were so happy that this guy was gone. But take a look at this. Look at this guy. Take a good look at him. And we stared evil in the face, and it stared blankly back at us. And there it is. Evil. Those two men killed millions of people. So this place is known as?
Terezin or Theresienstadt. It depends on if you're speaking to a Czech person or a German person. It was a fortified city. That's what it was originally built for during the Habsburg monarchy.
Habsburg.
And throughout time, this is going to be one of our best examples of the reason why environmental history is important to study. Because of the changes that were made to this fortified city. It went from keeping the people inside safe to keeping the people inside permanently until they were deported, mostly to Auschwitz. And so we got an extensive look at multiple places within the city of Terezin, which includes the prison, the ghetto area, which was mostly the interior city, and the crematorium, which was kind of on the outskirts.
And how many people did they jam in here?
58,000 were in the ghetto.
This is about a half a mile across, half a mile from one side to the other. They jammed the people in there. It was also built as a model camp that the Nazis wanted to portray to the world that, no, they weren't doing atrocities. They were treating their Jewish prisoners well. They sent, who did they send there? Artists,
professors, musicians,
deans,
actors, everyone that was anyone famous,
intellectual.
Yeah, any intellectuals.
And they had
children.
They had it. So they had an area of it set up really nice, and because they were worried that the Red Cross was going to come and visit, and they wanted to impress the Red Cross. And the Red Cross did come and visit, and they didn't see the horrors. Like she said, this was built in the late 1700s by one of the Habsburg emperors. It was so fortified that when Napoleon came through with his army in 1805, that he just stood up on the hill with his army and he said, nah, let's leave them alone. And he moved on. Fast forward to high explosives and new gunpowder type of stuff, then that made these kind of fortifications moot. And So like she said, instead of keeping the people inside safe, they just kept the people inside. And eventually they liquidated the ghetto. And by liquidated, that means that they sent the people to Auschwitz and killed them. This is on the way into the camp. These are not individual graves. These are all mass graves. As we walk into the entrance again, I'm the feeling of an ominous feeling that here we're going to go in there and see where work set people free. I should have taken more pictures. I took a lot of pictures, but I didn't take a lot of. I didn't take enough. There's an area in here where they held the guy who assassinated Archduke Ferdinand, the one that started World War I. He was held prisoner here. They had this could be a moat if they wanted to. They had means of diverting the local river. They could fill this up with water. They fill this up with water, a moat in between, once again, to keep people in, not out. And they had these kind of cool, inside each embankment for defensive fighting positions and tunnels. It was kind of cool walking around in there. And this was a room where they just would stuff in
over 100 people. The room was half the size of this room.
And they would just jam 100 people in there. Too bad, so sad, not your lucky day. This was an isolation room if you got in trouble. They would jam 10 or 12 people into this, shut the door, there's no light. Once a day they'd open the door, pull the dead people out and throw some more people in. That room is probably about this size. And just what a horrible experience. This is the death wall. When it became your time, they'd march you up to this wall and shoot you. The firing squad right there. You even see, look, part of the original wall chipped away from bullets. They have a monument right around the corner. If you're standing there looking at that, just on the right, you see this monument. Another moment that's just unbelievable how to describe. The Nazis, Gestapo and SS officers they lived and worked there. They had their families there. This is a remnants of a swimming pool in a recreation area. Right immediately to the left of where this picture was taken is a tunnel called the Tunnel of Death. And they would march the condemned prisoners past the swimming pool with the children playing in it, through the Tunnel of Death around the corner, right here. This is no more than 30 yards away from that swimming pool. And so then they marched the people up there, and the kids couldn't help but hear. It just boggles the mind. When we were at Dachau, I asked Adam, I said, how did the Nazi doctors reconcile what they were doing with their Hippocratic oath? And he turned around and looked at me, and he was angry. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at the history. He said, by this time, they had talked themselves into believing that the Jewish people were a subhuman species and they didn't deserve the Hippocratic Oath protection. And that's how they did that in their mind. And so here's another example of.
This is a perfect example of how they were training another generation to also feel the same way.
And then you'd take a shower, and wasn't a shower, it was a shower of gas. You would die. They would take your body out onto an autopsy table where the doctors would take anything they could that was valuable, gold teeth. They would cavity search because people would stash important things like jewelry, and the next thing you know, over to the crematorium. I was interested to find out. I asked the guy, what did they use for fuel? And he said sometimes they use coal and natural gas to get the temperatures high enough. One of the really sick things that they did was that by working people to death and having them be emaciated, that they would be able to be cremated in about 10 or 15 minutes. Whereas somebody my size might take 45 minutes. Gleaton's probably safe. So we didn't see there's a whole bunch of ovens. They would just stick you in there, pull your ashes out. Every once in a while, they'd clean the ovens. You know who out-operated these ovens? Other prisoners. The other prisoners had to do this to their own kind. Other prisoners had to transport the dead from the gas chambers to the crematorium. This also is a mass grave. Well, each one of these markers marks another mass grave. They don't know how many people are here, but each one, how many are in each one of those?
It's estimated about 100. And this field goes all the way back to the far tree line that you can see far over there. And it also goes the same distance on the other direction as well. It's a huge, huge mass grave.
Each marker 100 or so. We've all heard the story of Anne Frank when they were hiding in here. This was in not at the fort. This is in the town. They had a whole couple of families in there. You go through that little door, and it wasn't any bigger than this. That's those beds right there. That cabinet is right here, and that's where they had, who knows, 15, 20 people jammed in there hiding. Some actual clothes that people wore with the star that said Jew. Now, one of the things that they did there was, like I said, they sent artists, and they were promoting education, and they allowed the Jews to educate their children. And so they did some art and made drawings. What else did they do?
Sort of. It
They would have
wasn't
plays.
necessarily legal for them to do those things, but they did them underground because they had the capability to do that because of all the artists and the professionals that were there. So they had an incredible cultural life that you don't find anywhere else in any other camp that I've ever learned about. Like he said, they put on plays, children wrote poems, they drew pictures, they had an orchestra even. So the fact that life was allowed to flourish here even a little bit is very unique.
And they have a whole museum set aside to the activities, artistic and literary activities of the prisoners. So that was quite a day at Terezin. So we go back to Prague, and this is the main square in Prague with the classic Eastern European architecture. I thought I was looking at the astronomical clock. It turns out it's just right around the corner to the right. I missed it. But I plan on going back to Prague someday, spending some more time, having fun, actually. It's a nice city. And of course, we have to find something to eat. Nice little food stand. And then there's this little barbecue right here.
It felt a little strange to be so excited about all the food after having been to these places where we know what happened and the starvation and just the way that they had to live. So it was, like, don't take it for granted. Also get the food because it's in front of you, but
well, this smelled really good. And it tasted really good. It was expensive too. The Czech people believe that they make the best beer in the world. The national beer of the Czech Republic is Pilsner Urquell, and was also the favorite beer of my good friend Prof. A. And but a friend of mine recommended this beer called Kozel, and he said it was really, really good. And guess what? It was really, really good. I mean, we have to experience the Czech Republic, right? So, Brad, thank you for recommending that beer, right, worshipful sir? Shout out to you. We didn't drink a lot of beer. We were mostly on mission. So, but yeah, sample the local fare. Then we went to the Jewish Quarter, where we walked around all over the place, and we went into the synagogue. And I went into the synagogue. It's like, okay, it's a synagogue. What happened here? And I noticed the walls where it looked like kind of like they looked textured. Like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of an interesting color scheme. And then I got a little closer, and each one of those is a name. And each one of those walls represents an area of the Czech Republic where the people whose names on the wall were murdered. And so that was another kind of unexpected. You step up, and then this evil just hits you in the face. Add anything to that?
No,
There's not
it
words,
got
is
me
there?
too. The sheer amount. I mean, it was every wall in the entire synagogue that was covered with names.
Outside the synagogue is one of the oldest cemeteries in Europe, and
It's called the Old Jewish Cemetery. um, it goes about 10 layers deep from what they mentioned on our tour. Um, you know, according to Jewish religion, you're not supposed to exhume the bodies. And at the time, this was the heart of the Prague ghetto. So this is where everyone who passed was buried, and they were just buried on top of each other. There's also like Jewish prophets that are in there as well that people will go and visit and pray to. But for us, it was just a very harrowing moment that one, it was in the middle of the ghetto, in the middle of the city, in the heart of the entire city. And for me, that it wasn't destroyed, because the Nazis had a bad habit of destroying everything that they touched. Um, so for me, it was amazing to see that.
it's time to wake up.
Yeah. It was amazing for me to see that the culture and the heritage had remained and is still there today, being taken care of so well.
And as a brief aside, I'm listening to Dan Brown's newest novel, The Secret of Secrets, on audiobook. You might be familiar. It's Robert Langdon of, he wrote Inferno and the Da Vinci Code. And this book takes place entirely in Prague. And so it's really kind of interesting having been there. There's a whole couple of scenes that takes place in the synagogue and the Jewish cemetery. That's pretty cool. This is Wenceslas Square in Prague. It is famous for at the end of communism, and that's one of the things that the way they put it. They say when we were under communism, and the only thing they hate more than communism is Nazis. When they at the end of the I guess it was early 90s, maybe 1989, I think. I don't have the date exactly right, but for days, hundreds of thousands of people would come out and protest in Wenceslas Square in what's called the Velvet Revolution. And finally, the Czechoslovakian government gave up, and it was a more or less peaceful transition to power. It was me being a freedom lover. It was kind of a special place to be. Then we get on a train and go to Warsaw. That's not what they call it, though. They call Prague Praha, and they call Warsaw
Warsaw with a V.
Warsaw with a V.
Warszawa. They like to put A's at the end of.
And as we wandered around this building, just we could find our hotel by where this building was. We went to a place called the Polin Museum, Polin. The Polin Museum is in Warsaw, and it is a museum that is about the history of the Jewish people in Poland. And Poland was very welcoming to Jews, where a lot of Europe wasn't, and Jews were always getting chased around and kicked out of this place and that place. Poland took them in. So that's why at the onset of the war, there were so many Polish people in Poland. And one of the things that I learned inside that museum, and this is a memorial right on the outside of it, 90% of the Jews in Poland were killed during the Holocaust. 90%. Imagine that. That's a big number. And by the way, we all know the number of 6 million Jews. The Jews weren't the only ones that were killed during the Holocaust. They don't know how many people were exterminated, but the estimates are somewhere around 10 to 12 million. but there was a specific focus, of course, on the Jews. So then when I'd sit there reading this in the museum and I saw 90%, I was like, inside the museum was one of these motorcycles. And I have a friend, some of you know, Scott Maloney. And I sent him this picture and I said, I can just see you riding in the sidecar and me driving this thing while you're holding onto your hat like Indiana Jones and his dad. And Scott has a shout out to Scott. He has a dog named Indy after Indiana Jones. So that was kind of fun. Before we went into the museum, we found the museum. It wasn't quite open yet. We walked a couple blocks away and get some coffee. And the European coffee is quite excellent, I might add. It'll keep you awake. And I saw this tent, and it just looked like there was like a revival or something. So I walked. It was a little ways off the street. I walked over. I looked at it, and I said, "Shelby, you're going to want to come and see this."
So it was an archaeological dig of the remnants of the Warsaw Ghetto and where the resistance fighters hid away, basically. We walked around. She showed us what they had excavated so far. There were remnants of electricity, plumbing. They had kitchens. They had places to sleep. It was a home underground for them to try and stay safe. The reason it's such a big deal is because the Warsaw Ghetto was completely liquidated, not just the people, but the actual place. The entire city of Warsaw was bombed to the ground. So the fact that they were able to locate this and find it and preserve it is a major step. One thing that they were trying to do, I'm not quite sure if they have yet, but the goal is when it's finished to incorporate it into the Polin Museum, to keep it preserved for future generations. During this little experience here, I was talking, I cannot say her name. I'm not going to try and butcher it. I have her email though. But we were discussing my degree and what I was researching. And so she recommended this book that I'm holding. It's a guide to the Warsaw Ghetto, and it has a map of all of the different places that were within the Warsaw Ghetto. So there were two sides. There was a small side and a large side that were divided by a sky bridge, basically, which no one was allowed to look from. If you were caught looking, you were pretty much killed on the spot. So this book was a fantastic guide for us. Instead of going to Oktoberfest after we went to the museum, we explored the city and checked off a ton of the markers that were in this book. We found remnants of the ghetto walls. We found a children's hospital, which has an incredibly moving story. The woman that was the head of the hospital was told basically to send the children to their deaths, and she went with them nobly. She couldn't send them by herself, so that kind of makes me want to cry. But this was an amazing experience to meet her and to witness history being preserved right in front of me.
The reason I took her over there in the midst of her Holocaust studies is I'm not sure how you can really study the Holocaust without experiencing some of this. And so this is to give her literally a hands-on, eyes-on experience. And this is the kind of thing that you have to go there for.
This wasn't online.
And so many times you don't know what it is you're going to experience until you happen upon something. So this looks into where they were excavating. Now this would be a basement of a building, and all the way up until then, at this point, I'm not a historian. Obviously, I wasn't really familiar with the Warsaw Uprising. The whole time I'm thinking, why didn't these people fight back? I'm not getting on a train. I'm going to fight, and they did, and they rose up. And guess what? The Nazis don't have any sense of humor about that at all. And so what they would do with the resistance fighters they would go out and then they would hide. And they would hide in places like this. Now imagine that you're being looked for and you can hear the rumble of the trucks in the street You can hear the banging on the door. You can hear the jackboots upstairs, and you can hope that they don't find you, because if they do, you're in deep. What did I just do? Oh, okay. Thank you. Like I said, not all heroes wear capes. And so that's the Jewish ghetto after it was liquidated. There's nothing left. And I asked that young lady, "Where is this picture?" And what did she say?
Where we're standing.
Right where we were. We looked at that picture, and that happened right underneath where our feet were. Another moment where it just slaps you in the face. That's a part of the remnant of the wall of the ghetto. Here's another place that we found.
I just want everyone to look and see how tall that wall is. As a younger person studying the Holocaust, one of my questions was always like, how do you get out somehow, climb the wall, jump out of your window, whatever. And when I saw this wall, it was the first time that I really realized that they made it so that you couldn't. There was no escaping that.
So we go from Warsaw to Lublin, which is the next concentration camp on our itinerary. Lublin is in eastern Poland. You can see the country right next to it is Ukraine. So we're here in Lublin, not 50 miles from the border, where there's a war going on.
That was fun.
We got to Lublin at the train station, and we had to try to find the bus to the concentration camp called Majdanek. And this is just a snapshot of our life. I spent 45 days in cities that don't speak English, and I don't speak a second language, and certainly not one of these. These letters mean absolutely nothing to me. I put on Google Translate, and I say, "How do you say, where is the bathroom in Polish?" And I can't make those sounds. It is no good to me at all. Anyway, we did find a bus, and notice that there's water on this sign. It was a dreary, drizzly, cold day, which probably is it's just perfect the way the mood was when we went there. This is the memorial outside the Majdanek, just right across the street from the bus station. If you look off in the distance, this is a huge monument that covers a pile of ashes of people that have been cremated. And look how far away it is. Night, dreary day. We walk in there. And this is the building that houses the gas chamber. And
It's similar to Auschwitz. You walk in and they select you. You either go to the barracks that have the showers, or you go to the barracks with the gas. No one knows which one they are. We didn't see the regular barracks. We only saw the gas chambers.
So they would go in this room and take off their clothes. It was really common practice that they would, no matter where they went, when they were moved, they would take off their clothes. The clothes would get sterilized, and they would be showered and then reacquainted with their prison uniforms. But they didn't know what was going to come out of the shower heads, whether it was going to be warm water, never, maybe cold water, maybe Xylon B gas. So once again, the barracks. Now what happened in Majdanek? Tell them about Majdanek.
Which part?
When was it built? When was it liberated?
It was built in 1941, and it was liberated in 1944 by the Soviet Army. It was the first camp that anyone had come across that was intact in any way, shape, or form, really. Most of the camps were either completely destroyed, or bits and pieces were left, like Dachau. And so this was the first time that the real true horrors were witnessed by the liberators. And it was huge in comparison to Dachau. The layout was almost the same. Like I mentioned, Dachau was the prototype for the many concentration camps to come. And it was wild to see that coming to fruition in front of my eyes, that everything was the same. The Arbeit macht frei, the bunks, the labor system,
Whoops.
the crematorium, the every aspect of the operation remained the same, if not they better is a weird word to use, but they bettered their operations from Dachau to Majdanek at this point. They had pretty much mastered what they were going for.
They had originally built it to house Soviet prisoners of war, and they later on they switched it over to be an extermination camp. We had originally planned on going to Treblinka, which is much closer to Warsaw, but the Nazis, when they fled Treblinka, destroyed the whole thing, and the only thing that remains is a monument, and there's no camp there because it was destroyed. So my good friend Chris McGovern, he said, "Hey, you really need to go." Faculty member here at TCC Southeast, he said, you really need to go to Majdanek. And that was a really great recommendation. So thank you, Chris. And another moment, we saw these shoes. These are the shoes that were taken from the prisoners. You can see a whole rack over here. There's two racks like this. You can see how far back they go. There's another rack. The other side of the room looks just like this. And we're standing there, and we're about as far away as the chairs right here, looking at these shoes. And there was a shoe about this big. Now, Shelby's the mother of my two grandsons, who were probably like 6 and 7 at the time. And I saw a little kid's shoe, and I said, "See that shoe right there? Some kid's mom put that on their foot." And she just started bawling. And it was just another one of those moments that takes a story from history and makes it personal. And it's something not ever to forget. Are you ever going to forget that?
No.
Another gas chamber. Like she said, what they took the Dachau model and they expanded it and industrialized it.
That blue that you see on the walls is the remnants of the Zyklon B gas that was used. And this was the first time that we vitnessed that.
In the Zyklon B gas is activated at a high temperature. It doesn't vaporize until about 90 degrees. So what they would do is they would pack the inmates into these rooms, leave them in there for a little while to heat the room up, and then put the gas pellets in there so that they would vaporize. That is the crematorium then and now, and you can see here's the city of Lublin off in the background, and then the ovens, say industrial style cremation. There's the so we were back here, the crematorium's over here, and we took a look over here. And I said, "Hey, we need to get back. We got to catch the last bus that takes the last train out of here back to Warsaw. We got to go." And so we started walking. And this is not a pedestrian road. We were walking up this way, and we started walking. And we started walking faster. We started walking faster. We started walking faster, sort of almost a slow jog. It took us 45 minutes to walk from back there to the bus stop. That's how big it is. 45-minute walk.
Fast walk.
Fast walk, yeah. And we did. We got to the bus stop, and a minute later, bus came and off we went. God was watching over us for sure. All right, so we got into Lublin. We went back to Warsaw, and like I said, it's not the most logistically efficient model. Treblinka is right up here, but like I said, we made this call on the fly. Then we got on the train and went to Krakow, which is not what they call it. They call it Krakow. And I really liked Krakow. I'm looking forward to going back there again. This is the main square in Krakow. And Gabe, this is the little place that we've been telling you about, where we sat one morning. Here they are constructing the ghetto walls. Little plaque over here. And some people on a cart tour. You may be familiar with the story of Oskar Schindler and Schindler's List. They filmed that movie in Krakow, and in the movie, they marched the actors across this very same bridge. which is now a tramway. We went across it twice. And we went into the Schindler Museum, and it's just a typical Nazi type of efficient building. It was a factory. It was a factory where they made enamel cookware, and it was actually very famous. And when Schindler realized, probably the story of what he did while he was sitting at this desk and figuring out who was going to live and who was going to die and how he could help people live. That was an interesting little tour. You had to eat something. And so we have found these pierogies. These were so good. And we also got a mushroom soup that it was indescribably delicious. Now, one of the things that Shelby will tell you is she said, I saved money so I could buy food. I tried to starve her to death. I tried to save money by not eating. And so she said, well, I want to have a nice meal. And I said, all right, but you're paying for it, not me. And so she bought this dinner. So thank you very much. It was worth it. And I really wished I had, in being gone for 2 months over there, I could have spent a lot of money on food. And I probably should have spent more, but this was a very good meal. Now we're at Auschwitz. Auschwitz is not just one complex, it's several. And the tour starts out at Auschwitz 1, and you come up this ramp. What did you think of that?
It was a very real moment. We were all in a group, so it gave me the sense of, it took me back in time. It made me feel like I was being herded, like they had been once, with no way out, a straight way forward to an unknown. And all this while, there's speakers going with names of victims being announced. And the tour guide happened to mention that it takes about 3 years before those names start replaying. It's a lot of names.
Yeah, they're reading the names, and it's on a loop, and it takes 3 years to go through the loop. What does that say?
Hard bite mocked fry. Once again.
Work will set you free. And this is just what it kind of looks like a little bit. And another shooting wall where the firing squads would do their thing. And
this one is quite infamous. This was mentioned. I don't think that they've filmed at this actual location, but it was mentioned also in Schindler's List. So this is a pretty well-known portion of the camp. And that did not make it any easier.
No, at this point, we're almost numb to the atrocities. This is our 4th concentration camp. We've been to 3 or 4 museums. We've been to Jewish quarters in several cities. And what struck me most about Auschwitz is the ultimate in industrialization, industrial killing. And I have mixed feelings about this. No, I don't have. They're not mixed at all. This is when they liberated the camp. This is where they hung the commandant. I'm glad they got him. I think that they were just sad that they couldn't do it more than once. And so now here we are. Shelby took this picture with the iconic, this is on the inside, not the outside is on the other side of that deal. They would come in, and here we are now standing right where that story happened. And when you see all these barracks, and we have a view of the facility in its entirety, keep in mind that when the train came in and unloaded the people at the ramp, about 2/3 of them were in this group that went off to be exterminated, and only about a quarter to a third of them were the workers that were used for this camp. So what you're looking at when you see the number of inmates that were housed here, that only represents about a quarter of the people that were brought there. The rest of them were exterminated. And that's looking in the other direction from that same spot. Rows upon rows upon rows upon rows of barracks where people were just jammed into disease and parasite-infested quarters. That this building, it gets really cold there. in the winter time. And each building had one fireplace. And so there might be several hundred people in this building, and this is all they've got to keep warm. This is all they've got to cook on, just that one space. The crematorium, that's the remnants of it. They were destroyed, but you can see that it was built down into the ground for insulation and covered with earth to keep the heat in. Because once again, the gas came in a crystal form that was only activated at a higher temperature, and they used the inmates' body temperatures to heat the crematorium up. At the far end of the camp, away from the entrance, is a set of plaques. It's a whole memorial, and there's a set of plaques like this one that is in every language of people that were exterminated at this camp. And I know you can read, and I hate it when people read PowerPoints. You notice that there aren't any words on mine, but I'll read this to you. Forever let this place be a cry of despair and a warning to humanity, where the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children, mainly Jews, from various countries of Europe. Auschwitz-Birkenau, that's the main large facility.
Fun fact, not so fun. Birkenau is named after the city that was dismantled to build the camp. They quite literally took down houses, took down the bricks, and rebuilt a concentration camp there. And so quite shortly after its liberation, many Polish people who had been displaced because of that began to rebuild their own homes around the outskirts of Auschwitz.
So after that rather depressing day, back to Krakow we go. I did not take this picture. I got it off of the internet. Krakow has a really beautiful modern tram system like this, and you can see people going across the road all the time. And it was late. It was one evening, and we were walking across the street, and it's something very similar to this. And Shelby kind of stumbled on a track, and there was about a Yaris-sized car, a little tiny car. All of a sudden, some like police lights flashed up, and it took off. And I said, "Oh, they're going to get you for public intox." And at that point, no alcohol had been consumed. All right, and so that cop car turned around, pulled right up in front of us. 2 Polish police officers get out and start reading us the riot act. I have no idea what they were saying. All right, so and they finally switched to English. But I'm telling you this, after 2 weeks of going through what we just told you, and then having some uniformed cops yelling at us in a foreign language.
In an unmarked car.
In an unmarked car. You know, I tell people, we got jacked by the Polish secret police. And we really did. They gave us tickets for jaywalking. And we had to pay right there. And one of the things is they ask you, what's your father's name? And so they asked her, what's your father's name? And she said, he's right there. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know that woman. And yes, that's in the frame. And yes, it's in my living room as a memento of the story. And I'm pretty sure that this is what the cops looked like after they drove away. That was the highlight of their night. So that's the end of our trip. Shelby and I went to the airport in Krakow. She flew from there to Paris and made her way home. I got on a bus and went through southern Poland back into the Czech Republic. In Brünn, where I studied Gregor Mendel. And as she flew out of Krakow, she flew right over Auschwitz and took this picture. So you can get an idea. You know how big the bunkers are. And you can see how many there were.
That's just one side of Auschwitz. I couldn't fit everything in my camera. It's like 25 times larger than Dachau was.
And each one of those buildings were built to house only about a quarter to a third of the people that came in there on a train. The rest of them. And so that's my last slide. I just want to leave you with this thought and say, never again. That's anything else to add?
No, I would agree.
Thank you all for coming today. I hope that you leave here and cry, because it's not a happy story. But it was a good experience. I think someone's now well equipped to study the Holocaust, and it was precious daddy-daughter time too. Next time she's going to take me, and we're going to have fun. First stop, where are we going to stop first?
Oktoberfest.
Ask my girl. Perfect. Anybody have questions? We can stop recording. Questions, comments? Need a handkerchief?